I'm honored now to introduce our first keynote speaker, Judge Lisa Stark. Lisa graduated from UW-Eau Claire with a bachelor's degree in 1979 and earned her JD from the University of Wisconsin Law School in 1982. As many of you know, Lisa has had a very successful career as an attorney, judge, board director, and community leader. She is currently serving as judge for the Wisconsin 3rd District Court of Appeals. Before that, she served 13 years as circuit court judge for Eau Claire County. In recognition of her judicial prowess, Judge Stark was appointed Dean of Wisconsin Judicial College in 2010. In fact, she just came from Dean work in Green Lake. Yes. In Green Lake, just drove there from there to here this afternoon. She's been Dean from 2020, so we can call you Dean Stark as well as Judge Stark. Okay. But what impresses me most about Lisa is that she is a judge who has a vision and who works for the betterment of society. She has been a leader on initiatives related to offender reentry, alternative treatment, and restorative justice. She has served on boards of the Alzheimer's Association Regional Chapter, the State Regional Arts Council, United Way, YMCA, and the Eau Claire Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Lisa, for all you do and for representing UW-Eau Claire so well in the world. The title of Lisa's presentation is True Confession. I was an undergrad art major. Please give a hearty UW-Eau Claire welcome home to Judge Lisa Stark.
Thank you very much. It is a true confession, and I was an undergrad art major. And it sounds a little bit like a B movie, doesn't it? And when I think of the title of this presentation, I actually think of this picture. For those art professors in the audience, of course, you recognize the artist for Lichtenstein. When I tell people that my undergrad major was art, they chuckle. And they ask, well, how did you wind up in the legal profession with that type of background? And I tell them that my liberal arts education was the very best possible foundation and preparation for what I do and for life. So I'd like to thank you this afternoon for the opportunity to share a little bit about my views on the value of a liberal education and, of course, on this very special day. So I believe that a liberal education prepares you for life. And first of all, to meet its constant changes. And to give an example of that, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about my story. I came here in 1975, and like most students and freshmen at that time, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I had many interests, but I hadn't developed many of my passions at that point. And one thing that I really enjoyed was art. I enjoyed drawing and painting and printmaking. And my teacher at high school suggested I pursue a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, so that is what I set out to do. And a couple of my professors are here today. Barb Schaefer was actually my very first art professor, so art teacher, yeah. So I pursued that with an emphasis, though, in graphic design. And I took the core courses as well as those required for my degree, the ones that are really important, but at the time you don't think they're important. You just figure you got to take these classes in order to get enough credits to graduate. And so they're the ones that are so important, though, that define a liberal education. The general areas of study of philosophy, mathematics, literature, history, economics, languages, and some sciences. And I have to pause here for a minute because I am somewhat older, so when I took geology as my first science in 1975, plate tectonics was still kind of controversial. And I also have to pause and debunk a myth. Art and an art major is no walk in the park. It is tough. And I took a lot of grief from my family and my friends. Oh, they'd roll their eyes, oh yeah, she's an art major. But I have to tell you, I earned A's in other classes. I worked harder and longer, and unfortunately with a little less success in my career in art. It was very difficult and a lot of work. And perhaps that's an appropriate segue, because about midway through my third year, my graphic design professor, John Lawler, took me aside and said, "You know, Lisa, you're talented, but you're not that talented." And he didn't tell me that, of course, to diminish my passion, but so that I'd be better prepared for the real world. And it was really tough to hear, but I absolutely knew deep down inside that he was correct. And of course, for those prior 2 years, I'd had the opportunity to study a variety of topics and develop relationships with professors and colleagues with diverse backgrounds. So I had a lot of ideas to draw upon when I decided I needed to make that important change. And I didn't change a lot. I did change to an art major, but with a business minor. And it's still not a direct path to the law, but it was very helpful because one of those diverse and interesting courses that I had the opportunity to take as a business major ultimately was constitutional law, believe it or not. And Carl Andreessen was my professor, and he was a wonderful professor. And a new passion was sparked with that. So when came time for me to take tests to get into graduate school, I took the GMAT and the LSAT, and I had a choice. I was very fortunate. And my family will tell you that I love to argue. So law seemed to be a logical choice. And I did pursue law school, and very interestingly, law schools very much value liberal education backgrounds when considering their admissions. So my point in this discussion is that a liberal arts education opened up for me a world of opportunities and choices, particularly in the work world, but also in the real world besides that, which I'll talk about in a minute, and it does that for many. So here I am, May 1979, standing outside of Schofield Hall, ready to take on the world. And when I went to college in the mid-'70s, you prepared really for one career. And it was common to stay in that career for your entire work life. You might even stay in the same job for that entire work life. But today's world is much different, and many of the jobs that people prepared for when I was in college aren't even in existence anymore. And statistics show that new grads will change jobs once every 1 to 3 years, and they'll change careers perhaps 5 to 7 times during their work lives. Today, and we hear about it all the time in the news, there's an increasing emphasis on learning a skill, preparing for an occupation, not a career, to be valuable to employers, so when you arrive on the job, your employer is relieved of the costs and the risks associated with hiring untrained workers, and to developing a workforce for the jobs that need to be filled rather than developing people. I think that's important for some circumstances and some people, but if that's the view of the purpose of a university, of a college education, I believe it's very short-sighted. As I mentioned, many of the jobs people trained for when I was in school are no longer in existence, and if you train for a skill set, when it becomes obsolete, what do? You have to retrain. Instead, our liberal education gives us an invaluable set of lifelong employability skills, including that ability to think for yourself, the skills to communicate effectively, and the capacity for lifelong learning. So I'm talking about liberal education, and the American Association of Colleges and Universities defines it as an approach to learning that empowers individuals and prepares them to deal with complexity, diversity, and change. It provides students with broad knowledge of the wider world, as well as in-depth study in a specific area of interest. And of course, it helps students develop a sense of social responsibility, as well as strong and transferable intellectual and practical skills. Richard Sigurdson, a former acting dean of arts at a college in British Columbia, wrote an article about the value of a liberal education, and I have to echo his comments. You learn about ideas and beliefs that have guided humans and shaped civilizations for thousands of years, and at the same time, you obtain tangible and practical skills that employers value highly. And some of those skills are reflected here on this PowerPoint, but many of them, of course, we all know about: your analytical, your knowledge-building skills, your evaluative and critical thinking skills, your critical, reflective, and reading skills, problem-solving and pattern intelligence skills. We're supposed to develop numerical skills. I have to say, I'm sorry, but for me, not so much. But synthesis skills, the ability to express results of analysis and evaluation, The ability to pose meaningful questions. It's served me very well in my job as an attorney and on the bench. The ability to conduct research and organize material effectively. That's what I do in my job. The exercise of independent judgment and ethical decision-making. Again, that's what I do in my job. And then the ability, of course, to meet goals, manage time, and complete a project successfully. What more could an employer want? You also have the opportunity to develop an intellectual and social IQ in this liberal education. So not only that opportunity to just enhance your intellectual IQ, but the social IQ relates to the richness of our qualitative life and the capacity to effectively navigate complex social relationships and environments. So our liberal education, through our diverse classrooms, our diverse professors and offerings, gives us the opportunity to increase our social awareness. It gives us empathy, attunement, empathic accuracy, and social cognition. And it increases our social facility. We have self-presentation skills, influence, referent authority, and of course, concern. In other words, we learn how to better relate to one another, and we understand why it's important to do so. I think it also helps you achieve a measure of self-confidence and self-understanding, the ability to cooperate with others and work together, a sensitivity to individual tolerance and cultural differences, and an informed openness to new types of information. So, in addition to helping you deal with life's changes, I also believe that a liberal education helps you succeed in life's endeavors. And I was asked to talk a little bit about how that's translated into my work as an attorney and as a judge. Here I am, sitting on the bench. And as a judge, I'm not just a referee or an umpire. I am presented daily with unique facts and circumstances and new and different problems in many different types of cases. They might be a will dispute, or a plevin, or a foreclosure. It could be a first-degree intentional homicide. It could be a medical negligence case, and everything in between. Regardless of that case type, I must apply the law to each case to fashion decisions and resolutions that are legally correct, obviously, but also sensitive to the needs of the litigants and the community, and then strive to be as fair and as impartial as possible while doing so. You have to be able to see both sides of the controversy and analyze the positions thoroughly. And there's no formula that really tells you how to do any of that other than the standards set forth in cases and statutes. So in my undergrad education, in my liberal education, I learned a variety of skills that I use on a daily basis. The skills I learned here help me see the big picture, the overarching policy and the principles behind what I do and the law, and what it's designed to accomplish. Of course, I learned to read and research, which I do daily, and I honed my love of those things here, definitely starting with my constitutional law class with Carl Andreessen. I developed my analytical thinking and problem-solving skills. I have to use those, obviously, to get to the heart of the issues, and the litigants don't always get there themselves. And then devise a systematic approach to solving the problem. And I look at the law as a bit like solving a puzzle. You have to follow a path, or create a path to untangle the mess, and then put the pieces back together in a meaningful way. Then you have to be able to replicate it, and then you have to be able to explain it so people understand it. The skills here helped me learn to develop evaluative criteria, and I have to admit that in the law profession, we haven't been very good at that. We have not, except perhaps for the last 15 to 20 years, evaluated how what we ordered influenced people and what impact it had on society. We've now begun to start using evidence in a different way, research-based decision-making, to inform us, and so we have tools to assist us in making better decisions. And then, of course, time management, because every case is important, but some are more important than others, and you have to be able to balance that critical time organization. Communication skills, for me, as for many, many occupations, many professions, are critical. And I have to say that I did not learn the argumentative, hostile, rude, and outrageous manner of communication that we have come to see on a regular basis in our media and our politics in my liberal education. Ron Schlotman taught me business communication. I had Bill Hannaford for marketing. They would be appalled. In fact, I have learned through my education and, of course, my experience that that method of communication is actually very counterproductive. In my work, I have to listen. I believe that everyone has a right to be heard. They have the right to believe they were heard, and they have to know that in order for them to accept what I say and what I order. It's called procedural fairness. And then once you've heard what they had to say, you have to convey what you intend in a way that people will understand it and accept it. And sometimes how you say something is as critical as what you say. So courses that prepared me here for those types of tasks include, of course, my English and business for communication skills, my psych and sociology for understanding behavior types and how to relate better to people and to work with them, history and philosophy for policy and ethics, business, tax, corporate, partnership issues, sciences of all types, and then, I have to say, even art. Because art helps you see the big picture. It brings out that creative side of you, thinking on the right side of your brain. It helps you think outside the box. And that liberal education, as I've mentioned, I think prepares us for the constant changes of life, to exceed in life's endeavors, but it also finally helps us to be interested and involved citizens of the world. One of the things that was instilled in me from my family, and something that my husband lives, is that of whom much is given, much is expected. I believe that it's important to give back to the community of your time and your talents, and this was emphasized here at UWEC when I was here. It still is, and I know it is in many other liberal institutions. And it has been my privilege and my honor to serve on a number of civic and professional boards and committees, and the creativity that I learned here has helped me very much in those endeavors. And just one example of thinking outside the box, at least in the legal system, has helped me to develop a drug court, an adult drug court here in Eau Claire County, and we actually now have 4 treatment courts, to work with other professionals across the state and the nation in bringing evidence-based decision-making to our justice system, and to facilitate collaboration between our justice system partners. And these are all things that 20 years ago, certainly here, we wouldn't have considered, and we really wouldn't have thought possible. Now, I will say, giving back isn't always glamorous. This is me in my drug court dunk tank at an annual picnic, but it's fun. And of course, it's extraordinarily meaningful. What a privilege it is to have the opportunity to positively impact another's life. And this is a young woman who is a graduate from our drug court. I also think that our liberal education serves us not only in the professional realm, but it makes our personal lives much more well-rounded and fulfilled and enriched. To be more tolerant, sympathetic, and respectful, to encourage us to appropriately engage in the issues of our time, and then, of course, appreciate literature, music, art, nature. It teaches us to develop an intellectual curiosity that lasts throughout our lives and causes us to explore the world. So I took Greek and Roman history. I loved it. History of language, Eastern world religions from Rita Gross. And those taught me to honor and respect different cultures, traditions, and people that I had never experienced before. I do engage wholeheartedly in travel on a regular basis. My husband's right back there. He's smiling. You can ask him. And I think that my liberal education and that has taught me to reach beyond my experiences and imagine worlds far distant and different. In other words, to dream. So in conclusion, I recognize a liberal arts and sciences education is not a panacea. It's not the best choice for everyone. But for me and for many, it has made possible a wealth of opportunities, and it has enriched our lives. It's provided us with the foundation to be able to adapt to the changes necessary to succeed in life's endeavors and to follow and fulfill our dreams. Thank you very much for the privilege of sharing my thoughts with you on the value of this special education. I'm very honored to have been asked to do so. And I want to thank UWEC for giving me such valuable resources. They continue to serve me well in my career. They'll serve me in my next career, whatever that will be, and of course in life. Thank you very much.